we found a sample, and it was, again, we're exploring in places where there were rivers and where there were lakes, and much as on Earth, we think that that's where we'd see signs of ancient life on Mars. And so a year ago, we thought we found what we believe to be signs of microbial life.
Recently, NASA has made an announcement that has caught the attention of scientists, space lovers, and dreamers all around the world. The announcement comes from the surface of Mars, that red world that has been pulling on our imagination for centuries. Now, I want us to take this step carefully. Whenever we hear the words life on Mars, it's easy for the mind to run wild. We start picturing strange creatures, little green men, or even advanced civilizations. But that's not what today is about. What I want us to do is to slow down, breathe, and carefully understand what has actually been discovered. Because science works best when we strip away the hype and focus on what's real, what's measurable, and what's supported by evidence. So let's start from the beginning. For several years now, NASA's Perseverance rover has been exploring a very special place on Mars known as Jezero Crater. This crater is not just another dusty hole in the Martian surface. Scientists believe that billions of years ago, it may have held a large lake and a flowing river delta. On Earth, lakes and river deltas are the kinds of places where life thrives. The sediments trap nutrients, the water protects tiny organisms, and the chemistry creates an environment that is full of potential. So if life ever appeared on Mars, this would have been one of the best places to look. And Perseverance has been carefully moving across this landscape, drilling into rocks, taking samples, and analyzing the chemistry right there on the surface. Last year, in 2024, the rover came across a strange rock that scientists nicknamed Chiava Falls. What made this rock so unusual were its markings, patterns that almost looked like spots on an animal's skin. Early scans revealed something even more exciting. The rock seemed to contain organic compounds. Now, the word organic doesn't automatically mean life. Organic chemistry is simply the chemistry of carbon. Carbon compounds can form without biology. But the fact that they were there at all suggested that the conditions on Mars had once allowed for complex chemical reactions and possibly, just possibly, something living. Fast forward to this year, and the story has taken a new turn. The Perseverance rover has been studying more rocks, this time from places given curious names like Sapphire Canyon and Masonic Temple. When the samples from these rocks were analyzed, something very interesting appeared. They contain minerals such as vivianite, which holds iron and phosphate, and gragite, which holds iron sulfides. Now, the presence of minerals is not surprising on Mars. What matters is how they are arranged, the patterns they form within the rock. Here's where things get fascinating. On Earth, when microbes feed on organic matter, they often produce certain byproducts. As they breathe, they leave behind rust, sulfides, and phosphates, forming tiny layers and arrangements in sediments. Scientists call this redox cycling. It's a kind of chemical fingerprint left behind when life is busy living. The patterns inside the Martian rocks looked very much like the ones we see on Earth when microbes are doing their work. Of course, this immediately raises a question. Could this be explained by something other than life? Maybe by simple chemical or geological processes? Scientists are very cautious about this. They know history is filled with mistakes where life was announced too soon. But here's the important part. If this was just chemistry, it would be extremely difficult to explain. To get the same kind of mineral patterns without life, you would need very high temperatures, strong acidity, and conditions that don't seem to match this part of Mars. In other words, the simplest explanation seems to point toward biology. Now, does this mean we found Martian microbes? No. What we have are what scientists call potential biosignatures. Signs that look like they could be made by life, but signs that could, in theory, still come from something else we don't yet understand. And that's why the researchers behind this study were careful. They based their work on a null hypothesis, trying to prove that this is not life. And the strange thing is they couldn't. They found no good explanation for these patterns without bringing life into the picture. This is an extraordinary moment, but it's also a reminder of how patient we must be. It's not the first time we've felt this excitement. Back in the 1970s, the Viking missions landed on Mars and carried out the first experiments to search for microbes. One of those experiments gave results that looked positive, as if tiny Martian microbes were metabolizing food. But later, scientists realized the soil chemistry of Mars was more complicated than they thought, and the results might not have been life after all. Then came the famous meteorite, ALH 84001, found in Antarctica. Inside it were structures that looked like fossilized bacteria. In 1996, NASA scientists announced this discovery to the world. Even the US president at the time, Bill Clinton, spoke about it. It felt like we had found proof. But over the years, as scientists studied the meteorite more closely, the excitement faded. The structures were far too small to be bacteria, and later experiments showed that such patterns could form through purely chemical means. Eventually, the consensus became clear. There was no life in that rock, only geology that had played tricks on our imagination. And this is why today's discovery must be treated with care. We don't want to repeat the same mistake of rushing ahead. But there is a difference this time. The study from Perseverance is much more cautious, much more grounded in careful science. The researchers are not saying, "We found life." They are saying, "We have found patterns that look like they could have come from life, and we cannot yet explain them any other way." That is a powerful but careful statement. The challenge now is that the rover can only do so much. Its instruments are good, but they are not the same as a full laboratory here on Earth. To truly know whether these minerals are biological in origin, we need to bring the samples home. That was the purpose of the Mars Sample Return mission, which was originally planned for the 2030s. But funding troubles and technical challenges have delayed it. Right now, we don't know when or even if those samples will arrive on Earth. Until then, the mystery will remain. But let's pause here and think about what all this means. Even without absolute proof, the implications are huge. These findings tell us that Mars was not just a dry, dead planet billions of years ago. It was a world that may have had lakes, rivers, and chemistry suitable for life. And not just briefly, the signs suggest it might have remained habitable for much longer than we once imagined. If life did arise on Mars, even at the microbial level, it would change our understanding of the universe completely. It would mean that life is not a rare accident unique to Earth. It would mean that life may spring up wherever the conditions are right. And if that's the case, then the galaxy may be filled with life, from simple microbes to perhaps more complex beings. There's also another possibility, panspermia. Maybe life started on Mars and was carried to Earth by meteorites. Or maybe the other way around. If so, then all of us, every plant, every animal, every human, might ultimately be Martians. Think about that for a moment. Life may not only be common, it may also be incredibly resilient, able to survive journeys across space. When we think about Mars today, it is easy to imagine the images we have seen, a dry red desert world with endless dunes, rocky plains, and distant mountains under a pinkish sky. But the truth is, our vision of Mars has changed many times over history. If we go back a century or two, Mars was not seen as a barren place. Early astronomers peering through their telescopes thought they saw straight lines crisscrossing the surface. They called them canals. Some believed these were artificial structures built by intelligent Martians trying to move water from the poles to the equator. The idea captured the public's imagination. Novels and stories were written about civilizations on Mars. It was the spirit of the time, a mixture of new technology on Earth and dreams projected onto another world. But as telescopes improved, those canals disappeared. They turned out to be nothing more than illusions, tricks of light, atmosphere, and expectation. And slowly, the vision of Mars shifted from a world of advanced life to a more mysterious, but perhaps still living, planet. In the 1970s, this question was brought directly to the surface. NASA sent two spacecraft, Viking 1 and Viking 2, that landed on Mars. These landers carried experiments designed to answer the biggest question: is there life here? One of the experiments, called the labeled release, gave a result that looked promising. When nutrients were added to Martian soil, it produced gases that looked very much like the byproduct of microbial life. But the other instruments did not agree. They found no clear organic molecules. Scientists debated for years. Some believed Viking had indeed found life. Others thought the strange chemistry of Martian soil, especially the presence of perchlorates, explained the result without needing biology. That was our first close brush with the question, but it did not give us closure. It gave us uncertainty, a puzzle still unsolved today. Then came 1996. A meteorite, discovered years earlier in Antarctica, suddenly became the focus of the world. Inside, it were tiny structures that looked like fossilized microbes. NASA held a press conference. The US president made an announcement. Headlines declared, "Life on Mars." For a moment, it felt like humanity had found the answer. But science does not move on moments. Science moves on evidence. And as more studies were done, the excitement faded. The structures were too small. The chemistry could be explained without life. In the end, the meteorite told a different story, that Mars had water, complex chemistry, and maybe the right ingredients. But proof of life? No, not yet. This pattern, discovery, excitement, and then caution, has repeated again and again. Each time, we move a little closer to understanding Mars, but also learn to be more patient. And that brings us back to perseverance. This rover is not just a machine with wheels and drills. It is the product of decades of lessons, each mistake and each success shaping it. It carries the hopes of scientists who have spent their lives studying this question. It is slow, deliberate, methodical, the opposite of sensational headlines. When it drills into Martian rocks, it is not just looking for life. It is looking for stories. Stories written in minerals, textures, and patterns. Stories of water flowing long ago, of chemistry unfolding in the silence of an alien world. And perhaps, one day, the story of life itself. Now, let's take a moment to reflect. Why does this matter so much? Why do we care if microbes once lived on Mars billions of years ago? After all, they would be simple, invisible to the eye, nothing like the intelligent beings we imagine in science fiction. But think about this. If life started on both Earth and Mars, in the same solar system, that would mean life is not rare. It would mean the universe is naturally alive, that given the right conditions, life emerges as a rule, not an exception. This would change our place in the cosmos forever. It would mean the galaxy could be filled with living worlds, oceans beneath icy moons, atmospheres rich with biology, maybe even planets with creatures looking up at their own skies, wondering the same questions we do. And yet, there is another side to this. If life can start easily, why don't we see civilizations all around us? Why is the night sky so silent? This is the heart of the great filter idea. Maybe simple life is common, but complex life is rare. Maybe microbes are everywhere, but intelligence almost never arises. Or maybe intelligence does arise, but it destroys itself before it can spread. These are sobering thoughts, and they remind us why the search for even the simplest Martian microbes matters. Because it will help us answer these deeper questions about existence, rarity, and survival. Now, let's slow down again and look forward. The key to solving this mystery may lie in something very simple: bringing the rocks home. Perseverance is collecting samples, carefully sealing them into small tubes, leaving them on the Martian surface for a future mission to pick up. These tubes are treasures. Inside them may be the proof we have been searching for. The plan was to launch a mission in the 2030s to retrieve them. But as of now, that mission faces delays, funding cuts, and uncertainty. And so we wait. The rocks are there. Perseverance has done its part. But whether we will see them in our laboratories depends on choices made here on Earth. Choices about funding, technology, and priorities. It is a reminder that exploration is not just about distant worlds. It is also about us, about what we value and what we are willing to invest in. But let us imagine for a moment that one day those rocks do arrive. They are opened carefully in a sterile lab, and under the microscope, scientists see patterns that cannot be explained by chemistry alone. Imagine the moment when we finally know, beyond doubt, that life once existed on Mars. How would that feel? How would humanity change? Perhaps it would give us hope. Hope that we are not alone. Hope that life is written into the very fabric of the universe. Or perhaps it would humble us, reminding us that life is fragile, that Mars too once had a chance and now is barren. Perhaps it would remind us to take better care of our own world. The truth is, we don't yet know what this story will teach us. But that is the beauty of science. It is not about rushing to an answer. It is about walking slowly, step by step, question by question, always moving forward. And that is where we are today, on the edge of discovery, but not yet across it, surrounded by clues, but still searching for proof. The mystery of life on Mars is still open, waiting for us to continue. So where does this leave us today? It leaves us in a place of wonder and patience, a place where science moves slowly, carefully, step by step. We have tantalizing clues, but no final answer. We have patterns in rocks that whisper of ancient life, but we don't yet know if those whispers are real or illusions. What we do know is that the exploration of Mars has given us more than just data. It has given us perspective. It reminds us that the story of life is bigger than Earth. It connects us to a cosmic question that humanity has been asking for as long as we've looked up at the night sky. Are we alone?